Blaine here for Plastering for Beginners, and today we're going to talk about massive plastering tips to help you become a better plasterer. Going to be plastering Velux windows, going to cover wet angles, going to cover plastering reveals. We're going to talk about getting sloped and slope angles, getting them right. We're just going to be a massive video of lots of subjects, so keep watching. Let's get into it. We've got a slope. This is slightly bent, so we'll need to straighten this out. Got a Velux window, see the reveals. Then we've got this detail that comes down into the flat wall. And then we've got a return doorway. So it's a very small hallway. What we're going to be dealing with is working with this area right here. Make sure we get the slope nice and straight. Make sure we get the angle nice, horizontal, the same there. I'm just going to work through how to go around this. Okay, so this is the first stage. What we're doing is applying our first coat of plaster. Like anything, always takes 2 coats of plaster when you're doing some plastering. That's general rule of thumb anyway. Did do a video on 1 coat plastering. I'm not sold by it, so always 2 coats, and we're going to go into that into this video. But first off, what I will say is, when you are dealing with a sloped ceiling, always do the bottom half and the top half of the wall first. And that's why we're dealing with this section first. We're not going to do the slope at the same time, because what you need to do is you've got to plaster the section below and the ceiling above it, so then you can essentially mark where your line's going to be after it. Later on in the video I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. But the first thing I will say is, when you are dealing with a sloped ceiling, always do it last. Do the ceiling and the wall below it first. It'll just make your life 1,000 times easier, and I'll show you exactly why a little later on. As you can see, we're also plastering alongside a little doorway here. And what you want to do when you're plastering with doorways, you want the plaster to run alongside the doorway itself. It's not always the case. Sometimes the chippies get it wrong. Sometimes the door frame's a lot thicker on a plaster board. If that is the case, you just plaster next to it. Generally, you want the plaster to be on the same level as the door frame. So as you can see, at this moment, it's really tight, so there's not much space. So basically, I'm running the trowel next to the frame. But ideally, what you really want to do is you want to plaster up the frame. So as you can see there, I'm running the trowel up and alongside the frame. That means the plaster is going to finish perfectly in line with the door frame itself. And you want that so when the chippies put the architraves on, it sits nicely on the frame and also on the plaster, so it's not going to move. It just makes their job easier, and it makes your work look a lot easier. I mean, makes your work look a lot better as well, which, you know, it is a bonus in itself. So that's a few tips on plastering along door frames. I'll also show you how to deal with it in terms of cleaning it up a little bit later on. What I've done now is I'm putting a bit of plaster on the scrim tape. What you will find in working with skeelings, it'll sometimes kick, so that bit of plaster keeps it in place. So we've got the first coat on. Nothing special there. What I always will recommend is always use a Speedskim or a spatula, because it just makes the walls 10 times flatter. It really does do a great job, and it's so fast using it. Sorry. So that's another tip. Always get the Speedskim on the go. It'll just make your walls a lot flatter, and the results you get from it will be 1,000 times better. As you can see, I've also applied the plaster on the wall next to it. So in this video we'll be dealing with wet angles. I'm going to show you a good tip on making sure you get the most from your wet angles. So for now, we've flattened the first coat. We've got the first coat on. Again, nothing special. The next part, we're just going to start putting the second coat on. And again, we're focusing on getting that liner nice and flush. So what we're doing is running the plaster. And again, a good thing with door liners, you want them to run at the same level. So if you can, get that done. So here we've got a little bit of wall. a little section that I'm just going to prove a point on. Here I've been troweling the plaster upwards, and I've also used a Speedskim up along the bead. But what you want to do is make sure you trowel both ways. So I've been troweling upwards on this section, now I'm going to trowel across. And that means you're going to get your wall much flatter because you're testing it out both ways. If you keep plastering one way, then it might be flat on the upwards, but there might be a few ripples or undulation on the horizontal. So if you plaster both ways and trowel both ways, you're going to lead to a flatter wall. So all the plaster's on, but as you can see, it's a very small area. And there is a reason why we're not doing everything together, and I'm going to show that later on in the video. But as you can see, it's a small area. I've actually got other areas in the house to plaster, so I'm alright. I've got a few gauges on. But if it is where you're only allowed to do this, and you can't really tackle the arch at the same time, then you can use this product. This is half-time plaster accelerator. I actually tested this, I did a video on it, and it didn't actually work. This isn't panning out too well. I'd be expecting a bit more action from that. To be honest, I could have got a few more walls on if it went over this, but your man and the owner sent me some more and said, do you mind trying it again? I have since tried it and it actually did work wonders the second time. So if you have got a tiny hit like this, or a smaller hit to deal with, always use this because it really does speed up the process. Like I said, there is a reason I've not plastered this at the same time, and I am going to go into that in this video. But likewise, they've also done a product called Extra Time. Now this I love. I don't really often do tiny hits where I have to use half time, but this is an amazing product. This has saved me so much when I've got a big ceiling or a massive area to cover. This really does work. So have a look at these products. They are decent, and I've actually done a review on the Extra Time that was really successful. So there you go, have a look. Now what we're going to do is going to flatten this area. I'm going to get a Speedskim on the go, and then I'm going to fast forward, and then we're going to carry on with the rest of the area, and I'll explain why we've done the bottom separately to the slope. Let's do it. Okay, we're going to have a little look at this wet corner here. This is where two parts of the wall meet at the same point. And what we've got here, we've flattened it. We've got the first flatten on, obviously got two coats on. And this is where I use this little bad boy. It's my little Rafina corner trowel. This is the one I go for. I prefer to do it now, whilst the plaster's still wet. I don't add water at this point, because you don't really want to drench your angle, otherwise it'll start falling and it'll just ruin it. So get it in tight. Squeeze it in. Just be careful not to disrupt both sides of the plaster. And there you go, you've got a nice, clean angle. All I want to do now is give it a few trowels at the edges just to take out the little lines that are there. You can see a faint line there. Carefully put your corner in the corner. Put your trowel in the corner carefully. And take the lines out. You just got to take your time. It gets easier as the plaster dries because the corner starts to set. This is why you don't also want to add too much water. You want the angle to take up. So there you go. Lovely little line. So also at this point, you also, when you clean the plaster off your door frames, you can't leave it like that. It's not good for the decorators, it's not good for the chippies, it's not good for anyone. So take the edge of your trowel and then cut it back. Try and keep it along the line of the door frame, just so it looks neat. Obviously architrave's going on, so it's not too bad, but you just want it to look right. So you worked hard to get a nice finish. You want it to look right in all areas. So just cut it back. just finishes your work nicely and don't make you look like you're a scruffy little monkey.
Still fresh, that sounds great. Love it in the air. Tomorrow.
Really nice was, as they went down, they knew what their loyalty card or something like that to get it out. But it's really tight work, but people do actually really enjoy it because it makes the shopping quicker.
The amount of plastic that we're making and using in this country, we've only recycled 9% of the plastic that's ever been made. We're in the midst of a climate emergency.
Okay, so that's the first part done. Got the plastered, got 2 corners, got the face, got the bottom half. Now we're going to focus on the slope, getting these angles right. I'm going to show you exactly what to use for that, and the same here, and then finishing the reveals around the Velux. So we've still got a lot to cover, but as you can see, covered a bit so far, but now we're going to go into this section, the most important bit for me. Let's do it. Okay, so let's get this second part sorted, and what we're going to need is going to need one of these. This is a string line. What we're going to need to do is going to have to run a line from that corner to the bead, because basically you can see there's a bow in the plaster there, in the plasterboard, sorry. What we need to try and do is pull it out. We need to straighten that up. A lot of people think it's okay, just carry on plastering onto that, but it's our job to make sure we keep everything nice and crisp and straight. So we're going to run a line on both sides, and then we're going to get it right. So I'll show you how to do it now. Nail fixed at the end of my string line, that way I can hammer it into a point and then use it as an anchor point for when I'm lining it. Obviously I'm on my own most of the time, so that's what I need to do. So whack it in the corner. So you can see that is out quite a bit. So I'm going to try and pull it. So you stretch it, ping it. Same on the other side. So that's it. As you can see from the line, we've got a lot to cover. So we might not even be able to pull it out that much. Obviously when we're running down, we might not be able to get that much of the way, but at least with the line we can try our best to do as best as we can. And then what we're also going to use, we're going to use a Speedskim. That'll hopefully help to flatten that line out as well. So that's our guiding point. Now let's mix some plaster and try our best to get it right. Okay, so we're up to the angled slope ceiling, and as you can see we've put our lines on. What you really want to do is try and get your plaster close to that line as possible. Obviously we've got quite a curve, and there's actually quite a lot of there's quite a dip in that plasterboard, so we've got to be applying a lot of plaster. So the first coat you're not going to get it all, but what you want to do is get as much as a thick coat that the plaster can take. It will start sagging if you put too much on. And what I'm doing is really taking my time to put the plaster on the line. What you don't want to do is throw it on, get your plaster everywhere, and you'll actually lose track of where the line is. You take your time, and what I do is apply the plaster just before the line. That way you'll always see it. When it comes to applying your second coat, you still know where the line is. You've got to remember it's there as a guide, and we need to see it. If it's covered up, you won't know where to go, and then you'll have as much as a wiggled line as you would without it. We're doing that because as a guide you'll always have a much straighter line if you can have something to work to. It's like tracing on paper, innit? If you've got a line to follow, it's going to be a lot easier. So what I'm doing is really taking time, putting the plaster on, trying to get a nice thick coat on. I won't get it all, but like I said, with the aim of building it up on the second coat to make sure that I have really got the the thickness to pull that line off. What we're trying to do is make this whole area flat, aren't we? Without the curve in the middle, without the dip. It's the dip in the plasterboard that's creating that curve, and that's preventing us from having to keep a straight line. So what I was doing there is running the plaster up the bead. When you're plastering onto corner beads, always run it up it. That way the plaster is going to run parallel to where the bead is, and then you've got a nice square return if you do it that way. That's the best way to apply plaster to a corner bead. I have got a video on plastering corners. You can check that out on our channel for a more in-depth review. But for now, it's always good at the beginning stages of applying your plaster to always apply the plaster up the corner bead. And what I'm doing is the same thing as what I did on the other side. It's just trying to build this whole area out. This one I'm plastering now is actually it's more severely damaged compared to the other one. This has got a bigger curve, and it's actually needs a lot more plaster than the other side. So it's going to take some building up, but that's what the first coat is for, and then you can get it on the second coat. But as you can see, the line is already started to improve, and what we're doing is just going to carry on applying the plaster, carry on applying the first coat along the top and all the way around and onto the reveals also, and from there we can just carrying on building out and getting this wall right. So as you can see, we're closer, we can see the line, but we still need to build it up on both sides. So what we're going to do is going to flatten it with a Speedskim, try and dry the plaster out a little bit. The good thing with plastic Speedskim is it doesn't bring the moisture to the front of the plaster, so it'll actually help the plaster dry faster, which is good sometimes but also bad. So we're going to give it a quick run with the Speedskim and then give it another coat to build up this line and get that right. And as you can see, when you are applying the plaster, I do it just before the line. Just go before the line, and the second coat, that's when you finally meet it. I do that every time. That way you don't lose focus on where the line is, and you always can keep a track on exactly where to apply plaster. So let's do it. Okay, so we've got the Speedskim out, and this is really going to help the situation, because like I said before, it doesn't bring the moisture to the front of the plaster, which means it helps to dry the plaster out slightly faster than using steel contact, which means that we can get this first coat thickened up, and then we can directly apply our second coat on top of that to try and build it out. So we've got to still create a bigger thickness, we've got to put a bigger layer on top to really bring it out to the point where we need it and bring that line wherever it is. So applying our second coat, again taking our time to really apply the plaster to the chalk line that we've ran across, using that as a guide, and just really pulling it out now. This is our last chance really to get it to that line, to make sure that angle is completely straight. Again, I'm running the plaster up the corner bead, filling in it if there's any dips. This is the best way to plaster onto any beads. Same with the stop bead above, as you can see here. You want to run alongside the bead, and a good tip actually is to run all the way around, and that way the plaster is going to follow all the way. There's not going to be dips in the corners, which sometimes can happen. Apply your plaster, and then you trowel it around the beads from the top down to the side, and that way your plaster runs smoothly all the way along the top and just creates a nice flat wall once you've done it. That's the best way to apply the plaster really, and then run down to the bead after it. Same with the reveal on the inside. We want to run the plaster up along the bead. It just makes sure that whole area is completely flat. From there you can trowel outwards, but at the beginning you want to apply the plaster up the bead, and essentially that's the way you're going to get your reveals bang on, is by doing it that way. Making sure now I've got two reveals next to each other, so you want to use your trowel as a straight edge to make sure you've got a nice crisp angle at that point, and just take your time. These are tricky hits because you've got a lot to tackle in one point, but with practice it'll be bang on. Okay, so the second mix is on, looking good. We're going to use a Speedskim now to try and straighten that even more. Try and get them lines bang on. We're not looking too bad, to be fair. Most of the blue's gone. We're just going to use the Speedskim to really straighten it up. The reveals are on as well, as you can see. Now we're just going to start getting the whole section nice and flat. Let's do it. Okay, so now final chance. We're going to use our Speedskim. And you really want to push in at the bottom there, and you really want to make that line as presentable as it can be. And because we're using it as a complete straight edge, it's just going to pull the wall and make it completely flat. I'm digging in at the bottom, trying to make that angle as straight as I can. And this is what's really going to create that fine line and make a big difference. And to be honest, after this point, the hard bit's been done. We've applied the plaster where it needs to be. We've pulled the line out, so the rest should be smooth sailing. So now we've got a straight line. Looking, we can't really see the blue anymore. I've got a nice straight line going through. I don't think I've missed anything. That one's been straightened off nicely. And it's the same on this side. Try and get out the light. That there. It's actually saying it's slightly higher here. But to be honest, I'm quite happy with that. So now what I want to do is scrape back the excess on the edge. Just smooth it up, crisp it up a bit more. So then when it comes to smoothing it, we know exactly where we're stopping. So just get that line nice and clear. As you can see, the blue line is showing a tiny bit here, but that's it. Generally, it's followed it quite well. And that was a success. Compared to what it was, it's looking good. Same on this side. Just clean it up a bit. And then clean the edges, get rid of the excess, run up the reveal. Again, this is only the first flatten, so I've got plenty of time, but the faster you get it right, the better. So that's that. Not doing too bad for now. That's the basis done. That's the hardest bit. Make sure everything's crisp, clean and straight. So far we're doing alright. Let's crack on. If you look on the underside, it's not quite crisp and there's a few gaps. So you take the tip of your trowel, run it under, cleans it up. Now I've got a clean crisp line. Easy. So now everything's been flattened, everything's cleaned up, the rest is fairly easy. All I've got to do is just carry on with the process now. To be fair, everything should be smooth sailing. So I'm just going to speed it up a bit, go to the end, and then by then we should be left with two beautiful walls and a nice slope. Nice one. Okay, so this is it, the final tip. When you're finishing your plaster, always use one of these. This is a plastic trowel, this is a Rafina one. I have to admit, this is the best trowel I've ever used to get a decent finish with. If you're going to learn anything in terms of tools, get one of these because they're unbelievable. Now what we're going to do is going to finish this off. Just going to trowel it up. Nice and easy. Work the reveals. And the same here. A bit of a clean up on the edges. As you can see, that line is a lot straighter now. It's a lot straighter across, there's no dips. It's the same on that side, and all around we can see the reels are looking good. It's all square, looking nice. That's just because of a bit of prep, using string line, and using a few little tips and tricks. So that's it. That's the video over. Blaine Gray, Plaster for Beginners. If you like this video, please subscribe. And to learn more about plastering, join our welcome course, which is the link below, or there should be something above here to click. We'll teach you how to plaster, we'll show you the full process, how to mix the plaster, how to apply it nice and flat from square one. And any little tips that we haven't shown, we'll go in detail in the welcome course. So click the link below, get involved, and subscribe to our videos for more, by the way. If you like this, please subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see you again. Thanks a lot. Cheers.